Hi, attorney Carlos Colombo, and today we are going to cover a very interesting topic, a new guidance that USCIS has issued regarding EB-1A applications. And we have a special guest, Roshn, one of our attorneys here. Roshn, if you can introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Roshn Vazhel. I'm the RFE Department Director here at Colombo and Hurd. I'm happy to be here.
No, and Roshan, today we're going to be talking about something that hopefully will make some of those RFEs that you sometimes get a little bit easier to respond with regard to EB-1As. It's interesting, it's the beginning of the new fiscal year, so happy 2020-25 for USCIS. As many of you know, USCIS fiscal year starts October 1st. And the very next day, on October 2nd, USCIS issued new guidance on EB-1 eligibility criteria. They announced that the second day of the fiscal year, which I think it's a positive thing that we're seeing from the Biden-Harris administration, especially about a month before the elections, to see that in this new fiscal year, USCIS is perhaps making it a little bit easier, Roshan, with regard to EB-1As. What's your take on this?
Yeah, I definitely think it's a trend to try and not only make them easier, but clearer. An important thing to note is that last year, September 12th, 2023, that's when we had another policy manual update. And that's when they took a lot of what was in the appendix and just put it straight out there for everybody to see. And that was really helpful to clarify what the USCIS valued. However, this additional update further clarifies what they value in these criteria. And most importantly, makes it very clear that, it's not just you having been doing everything by yourself, because a lot of what people do is indeed teamwork. And that part of this is further clarifying that if you're part of a team that's accomplished something extraordinary, it's still valuable and you can still qualify for this type of petition.
And that's a great point because they're, these guidance are not changing the law, right? Because USCIS can't change the law. Congress must change the statute. So if we're going to see major changes, we're going to have to see some kind of congressional action, which, as we all know, with the way the politics is right now, we're not going to see any changes passed by the U.S. Congress anytime soon, especially regarding immigration. So these guidances that they send over is to try to clarify what sometimes us as attorneys, what we need to do maybe in responding to an RFE, which is, your expertise and your department. Sometimes you can get an RFE where they're questioning certain types of evidence and some of the criteria for an EB-1. So a lot of times we don't give USCIS a lot of credit for maybe not doing their job. But this time, I think we have to give USCIS and the Biden-Harris administration some credit that they're maybe listening to some of the stuff that we try to educate some of the USCIS officers on with regard to how the criteria should be identified in the real world. Because part of the problem, we haven't had a major change in USCIS law in so long that how over 30 or 40 years, how this has developed over time, it has changed. And we have to be more practical about how USCIS is going to weigh that evidence. So let's get into the meats of this and the bones. Can you walk us through what criteria USCIS actually has tried to clarify with this new guidance?
Yeah, I can certainly do that. There's four criteria that they've worked on here, and I'll start by just listing them, and then I can go into each one. So the first one that they've worked on here is receipt of lesser nationally or internationally recognized prizes or awards for excellence in the field of endeavor. So that's the first one. Second one is membership in associations in the field for which classification is sought that require outstanding achievement of their members as judged by recognized national or international experts in their disciplines or fields. The third is publish material about the person in professional or major trade publications or other major media relating to the person's work in the field for which classification is sought. And the last one is display of the person's work in the field at artistic exhibitions or showcases. So what the USCIS has done here is they haven't edited too much, but what they have added is actually pretty important, as well as what they have removed. For the first one, receipt of lesser nationally or internationally recognized prizes or awards for excellence in the field of endeavor, the USCIS here has pointed out, not just to us, but to their officers, that nothing in this criteria allows the officer to not take into account something that a person received as part of a team. And that if somebody was part of a team that received the reward, as long as they're one of those recipients of the award, it should be counted the same as if they individually received it. And that's very important. Last year, they added this to the published material, which I'll informally call media coverage or coverage, because they wanted to make clear that just because you're part of a team, that doesn't mean that you don't deserve credit for something. It's very rare for somebody in the field to just receive something entirely for themselves. And I think this is part of a reaction to what people informally call this type of visa, the Einstein visa. That's clearly not the intention. You don't have to be Albert Einstein to receive this visa. It's not that exclusive that nobody could actually achieve it. So importantly here, they're saying you can be part of a team. And because you're part of a team and you got a team award, that means that that award should be considered here.
And that's a great point, because USCIS, maybe if you won the World Cup in cricket or in soccer and you're a team member, you're one of those team members, maybe they would not RFE you, or they may not question because you're one of those players and it's the cricket or soccer World Cup. So it's something fairly obvious. But when you have an award that maybe it's in robotics or AI, or you're a scientist or you're a doctor, or you're in something maybe a little bit less recognized, it could be something more artistic or cultural. The problem there is that the officer may not know what that award really was, and really how you have contributed as a member of that team. And so you would have to give further explanation, and sometimes they would dismiss it as not being something that it would be recognizable. So I think that this makes it easier for the less obvious situations. And I think it's not only just this part of the guidance, I think it's actually all of them that would make it a little bit easier. But let's go through the second one on membership criterion, which is something that we see pretty often.
Yeah, definitely. Again, a very small but important change. What they've done here is they've added past memberships as well and clarified its present or past. And this is pretty important because memberships in these types of associations, people may not be able to maintain them for many reasons, but they were still part of that association. They met the requirements, they had the outstanding achievement, but something changed. And I think that they wanted to make clear that it's about the field, not about, what you're currently engaged in professionally in that sense, because these associations could have high levels of fees. They could have location requirements, like you're no longer in that country, so you cannot be part of it. If you went from academia to industry or industry to academia, maybe you can't be part of that association anymore. So they're opening it up so that you don't actually have to be part of the association right now. You were already found to be outstanding by being able to join. So it's making it easier for people, and also clarifying for officers that memberships, in my opinion, that they should be taking them a little more seriously indirectly as well, instead of questioning them more often than they really should. Clearly, if somebody's been judged by recognized experts in the field, that means that they've had outstanding achievement. If the association is prestigious enough, then it doesn't matter if they're no longer part of it, because something changed in their life. They were still part of it at some point, and that speaks to them having extraordinary ability.
All right. And then number 3, the famous, or sometimes not so famous, published material part of the criteria.
Yeah, and this is the one that's a little more extensive. So what they did here is they actually removed a sentence, which is any materials the petitioner submits must demonstrate the value of the person's work and contributions and must not be solely focused on the employer or organization that the person is associated with. It's still the case that it can't just be about the employer and the employer's work. It still needs to be about the person. However, they removed the part that said demonstrate the value of the person's work and contributions. I think that, in my opinion, why they've done this is because when they use the word contributions, it kind of treads closely to original contributions and matter significance. That's a very different criterion. And using that same word and trying to make it seem like you have to meet original contributions and matter significance to even meet this criteria was clearly wrong. But maybe that the USCIS had thought that officers would not be confused in this manner, but they clearly were. And I think this is going to make, again, along with the team-based version from last year, this type of coverage should be much more important. It'll be a lot easier to meet the plain language requirements for this criterion. It's just, again, showing that in the modern world, people are usually working as parts of teams. And if there's going to be coverage about somebody's work, they might not go that far into like why this is, super significant for the field. It's enough that it's in major media and it's given for the layman, it's not going to go that far into that explanation. So I think that this is going to be a lot easier for people to meet the plain language criterion for.
Right. And it's also, if there's going to be published material about you, you don't control how they're going to present that information. It may be a major publication that has a significant impact, but you can't say, oh, and by the way, can you please add this additional language because I may need to use this down the road with USCIS, which is just, not, like you said, it's not the modern world, it's not the real world. So kudos to immigration for finally understanding that the real world is a little bit different than how some of these criteria were developed. And then the final one on exhibitions, this is a little bit more of a narrow criteria that may not apply to a lot of applicants necessarily, unless maybe you are doing some kind of exhibition for artistic purposes, etc.
Yeah, exactly. The only real change they've done here is that they have made very clear that this is really for people that are doing artistic works. I think that initially there was a bit of a confusion. I could see it a lot where people would be doing things like, presenting at conferences, scientific conferences, and then thinking that it might fit here. The USCIS is making clear that this is only for artistic exhibitions. If you have something else, you can try using it for comparable evidence. And indeed, in comparable evidence, they brought up specifically, if you've done significant numbers of conferences where you've given presentations, that's comparable evidence because it doesn't cleanly fit. But this is more of a clarification on their part to reduce confusion.
Right. Well, we have to give USCIS credit for doing this. I must say I like that the beginning of the fiscal year for the EB-1A. If you're considering the EB-1A, it's a good start to the fiscal year 2025. You have for the rest of the world, you have current visa availability, which is a major issue. There's only two categories right now that I can think of that are currently current with the visa bulletin, and that's EB-1 for the rest of the world, and the EB-5 in certain categories of EB-5 also, because as you know, we have different set-asides for EB-5. EB-2 is somewhat backlogged for the rest of the world. EB-3 is very backlogged. So if you are in a category, and even for those applicants from countries such as China or India, the EB-1A remains probably the fastest way to a green card right now. USCIS making the criteria a little bit clearer to begin 2025 is a positive development. So if you're considering this, I would encourage you to consult with an experienced attorney. You have the link to our webpage so you can set up a free evaluation of your profile, so we can take a look to see if you meet some of these criteria for EB-1 eligibility. It would be obviously a pleasure to be able to help those with extraordinary ability to come to the United States. Roshn, I want to thank you. That was a very good explanation of these news that we received yesterday from USCIS. And hopefully we will see maybe less RFEs on some of these criteria in the future, making your life and, of course, our clients' lives a lot easier going forward. But thank you, Roshn, and thank you all for watching us. Until next time.